Hi everyone. Thanks first and foremost for coming out and seeing my talk here today. By way of introduction, my name is Peter Manta. I am the global AI and data strategy leader for Informatica. Yes, the ETL people, Informatica. But we've done more than just ETL over the past few years. And not to bury the lead, but what I'm going to talk about is everyone's focused on AI, but we don't focus on the data as much. So I'm going to talk about why data is critical to the success of AI. And we'll start. I don't think I need to tell anyone in the room here that AI is kind of having a moment. It's sort of a big thing lately, which is funny because it's not really a big thing. We've been doing AI for the last 50, 60 years in the form of data science, predictive analytics, but it's Gen AI that's captured all of our attention, right? And it's not that new of a thing, but it's very, very important, and we've got lots of potential here. But what I'd like to do, again, is kind of focus on the data, and I want to arm everybody with a little bit of information as to why we think data should be important. So just by show of hands, how many of you in the room have some sort of AI initiative going on at your organization? Pretty much everyone, that's what I expect, good. How many in the room then are working with data in some way or form? A little bit less, but still a good number. Now we'll do the Venn diagram and bring them together. Of the people who said yes to both, how many of you data people are involved with the AI initiative? Not as many, but I would argue you should be involved. And I'll try to give you some ammunition as to how you can get involved and why you should be involved, and it's important. So let's go and talk a little bit about why that's important, why you should be involved from the data perspective. So Informatica, every year, we go out and do a variety of surveys. We did a survey of CDOs, and we said, of those trying to implement some sort of AI use case, what roadblocks are you encountering? And these are, forget the numbers, they're not quite as important, but look at the types of things that we're seeing in terms of responses from CDOs for roadblocks, right? Quality of data, data privacy, AI ethics, quantity of data, AI governance, everything involving data, right? These are the main roadblocks that the CDOs responded to us and said that these are the things stopping us from achieving our AI goals. So again, to my point of let's make sure that we are practiced and we're involved with, from the data office in these AI initiatives. These are the reasons why. We can help with quality of data. We can help with data privacy and protection, et cetera. Now we're gonna do a little fun exercise. This is gonna be nice. We're all friends here. So we're gonna go on vacation together. Informatica is gonna sponsor all of us in here to go on a nice vacation. Exactly. The catch is we're gonna let AI pick the model for us. Or we're gonna let an AI model pick the destination for us. So this is the audience participation part of the exercise here. What types of information do you think we should feed into the model for its consideration so that we can make sure it picks a nice place? Shout them out, anything. Weather, geography, activities, food, time of year, yep, all that stuff. Right. Exactly, so you guys are on this. All of these things, right? Like right now, unfortunately, would be a terrible time to decide to go to Disney World. Hopefully everybody there is okay. The hurricane, I guess, came weaker than expected, so that's good. But we go and we feed all this stuff into the AI model, and it says, I've got a great place to send you. You're gonna go to a South Pacific island off of Fiji or something, so we're all gonna go there. We fly, we get in the plane, we land, and the beaches are covered with tar. Well, what happened? Well, we didn't take in, nobody here yelled out commercial shipping. We didn't think about checking commercial shipping logs because an oil tanker ran aground just off our island. Now the beaches are full of oil and the bars and restaurants are closed. We can't get the little fruity drink with the umbrella in it. It's terrible, but it's okay because we've got a backup plan. Second is that the AI is gonna say, I'm gonna send you off to the Canadian Rockies. We're gonna go to this beautiful mountain lodge. There's a live-in chef, there's ski trails nearby. It's amazing. It overlooks a beautiful lake. And the best part, it's only $50 per night. So we're gonna spend $350 for each of us. Informatica is gonna spend it because we're all sponsoring you, for everybody to go on vacation. The problem, it wasn't really $50 per night. We just made a little problem or a little error in the data. It was $3,500 a night. $5,000 a night. So instead of $350, now we're all gonna spend $35,000, right? So it seems like a small change, 2 decimal places off, but it has a huge impact in where the AI would send us. Because if it knew it's gonna cost $35,000, it wouldn't have suggested the Canadian Mountain Lodge. All right, so in the first case, we didn't have robust data. We didn't look at all the data we should have. In the second case, we looked at the data, but part of it was wrong. So we have a choice C, the third choice. The AI is gonna send us off to one of the great European cities, right? Athens or Paris or Rome. So we all fly to Rome, but what we didn't know is half of us maybe have a gluten allergy. So we're gonna go and eat pasta for a week with half everybody getting sick. Because we didn't take into account the biases inherent to us, right? The people that we're gonna be sending on vacation. We weren't responsible about the data that we looked at in terms of training the models. So just sort of a little bit of a fun exercise, and we're not actually going because I don't want to take everybody's name for my expense report. Sorry about that. But a little exercise to kind of promote this idea of we need robust data, we need relevant data, and we need responsible data when we're looking at these AI applications. Now, when we think about this, if we don't do those things, what happens? Well, there's a lot of these kinds of fails out there that you can go and search up. Some of them are kind of funny. Some of them are a little bit expensive, like the Zillow one in the middle, and that's my favorite example on this stage, or on this slide. Zillow has the real estate valuation company. They have a website. Of course, you can go and you can look up something called a Zestimate, right? You get an estimate of a home. And they're pretty good at it. When they first rolled out this estimate, I think they were predicting for like 43 million homes every month, and they were within 15% accuracy. So the actual sales price of the home, they were within about 14% of their predicted price. And over the years, they refined that, and they're predicting, I think now, about 110 million homes per month, and they've gotten it down to like 4 or 5% accuracy, so pretty good. Zillow decided they're gonna open up a new business called Zillow Offers. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna find homes that are undervalued, they're gonna buy them, and then they're just gonna flip them, turn them around in the market and sell them. So we think this home is being listed for 500,000, or we know it's being listed for 500,000. We think it'll sell for 6, so we buy it for 5, we immediately put it in the market and try and sell it for 6. What they did wrong is they chose the wrong model, first of all. They chose a model that was too brittle to adapt to changing market conditions and changing data, and they trained it on a different data set. So they already had one thing that was working, his estimate was working. They built something else called Zillow Offers on different data with a different model, and the market changed, and the thing went bad. They lost $300 million and had to fire 2,400 people, I think. So there's real world implications of when we get this wrong. There's some funny ones up here too, and the chatbot swear at people and things like that, selling a Chevy truck for $1. But $300 million is probably less funny to the Zillow people. So when we think about AI, and this is kind of a high-level look at, or high-level representation of the AI workflow or data science lifecycle, et cetera. What do? Right? It's super tempting to go and jump right into the middle, the modeling. And we say, oh, we're gonna pick our random forest and look at our k-means clustering, we're gonna do neural networks. Why do we do that? Because that's kind of the sexy part, right? We wanna go and we wanna build the models, and we wanna train them, we wanna produce output. If we do a good job in the middle, our boss pats us on the back and says, hey, great job, you're gonna get a raise. But those models and all of that work doesn't happen without the stuff on the left, right? The hard work, the grunt work of the data, the exploratory data analysis, finding the data, governing it, making sure it's fit for purpose, cleaning it up, doing feature selection, feature engineering, right? If I've got a data set full of phone numbers, those phone numbers from an AI perspective to me aren't that useful, but if I peel off the area code, now that's something I can use. Geographically distribution, I can do some analysis there. So how do I go and work with all of the data, make sure the data is fit for purpose? So when I get to the middle section, the modeling, those outcomes are as high as quality as they can be, right? So it very much falls into the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the work is not modeling, and 20% is modeling, but we focus on the 20%. That's where we love to dive in, where really that's becoming a commodity. The modeling is becoming a commodity. There's Databricks and AWS, knowledge base, and Azure, and Google, and there's even in Python, right? There's tons of Python libraries that make the modeling pretty easy to do. But the EDA is never gonna be that easy to do. It's gonna be, that's the grunt work that's not that sexy. And if we do a good job in the modeling, what happens? Well, we have a bunch of models that people are starting to use now. So we've done a good job with data, we've modeled it correctly. Now I've got all these models. How do we use them? How do we find them? How do we understand the consumption mechanisms? How do we make sure they're not drifting? When do we need to retrain the models? That's all the stuff on the right, the operationalization. So how do we go and govern all that? And how do we look at it and make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do? And I personally think that when we see the AI regulations rolling out more fully here in the US, that's gonna become a much bigger deal, right? Transparency and accountability. All of the governance and the deployment and the understanding and the drift monitoring is going to become very relevant. So when the AI goes off the rails, we can explain what happened. So the focus is on the middle, but it should really be on the bookends, primarily on the front, where the EDA is involved. Now, from the Gen AI perspective, that's captured all the world's attention, right? These applications, we know that they hallucinate. We know they need to be contextualized, high quality data. So there's a lot of kind of interesting context here. So in terms of contextualization, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, which we're terrible. And if I say the Cubs are better than the Braves, and if I'm standing in a bar and I say that to somebody else, and that person says to me, I'm gonna beat you up, that means something, which rightfully so, That means something very different than if I'm standing at the bottom of a staircase saying to my friend, I'm going to beat you up. Right? The same words, but mean two totally different things. On one hand, I'm going to get into a bar fight. The other hand, we're going to have a race up the steps. So the context in which we're asking these questions and the context in which we're using the data to train the models is really important, right? If I say, tell me about the color blue, well, that's going to be very different if I'm just a regular user or if I'm selling paint. If I'm selling paint, tell me about blue. Here's all the colors of blue we sell. Otherwise, oh, the sky is blue, the ocean is blue, right? So the data needs to be trained, or the models need to be trained in context with the right kind of data to make sure we're providing the right outcomes. High quality, I think that one's self-explanatory. Easy to develop and deploy. Again, the modeling is becoming, in my opinion, commoditized. That's being pretty easy to do. Things like AWS Knowledge Base, right? I can go and I can just start dropping documents in there. It does the chunking, the embedding, the vectorization. It'll do a lot of that for me, and we're gonna go that direction. So building these models and building these processes is becoming something that is easier and easier over time. And I think the focus is not gonna be there, but the focus is still gonna go back to the data, making sure that we're using the right data to train these models. And then of course, the far right one, governance and security, huge. If I'm an HR person and I ask my internal chatbot, show me the salaries of people in North America, I probably should be able to see that. If I'm in sales and marketing or manufacturing, whatever else, if I ask the same question, I shouldn't get that response back. How do we ensure that we're getting the right data coming back to the right person asking the question? So we've kind of bucketed these into three categories. And the marketing people love to use, alliteration. So relevant, is that the right, yeah, alliteration. Relevant, robust, and responsible. Pick your own words there. But the idea is robust data for AI. Right, that was our first example with the oil tanker. We didn't look at shipping, and we didn't take a look at all the data that we might need to look at to give us proper output for the AI. To say, well, we needed to look at the shipping models or shipping marine traffic because an oil tanker crashed. How do we look at everything? And that's tough to do. We have to get into mainframes, streaming sources, applications, JSON documents, unstructured data, all that stuff. How do we gather all that robust data and bring it together? Relevant data, the data has to be right. Right, my example of, we're $50 versus $5,000. Seems like a small thing, 2 decimal points off, but in reality what happens is it has a massive impact on the end because the model wouldn't have chosen to send us to that Canadian lodge if we'd gotten the numbers right. And then responsible data. How do we make sure that we are treating the data with an eye towards ethics and bias to make sure that we're not all going to Rome to eat pasta when half of us are going to get sick doing that? So these are the ways we bucketed these. These are kind of the pillars. So when someone says, we've got an AI process or a project coming along, what we would encourage from the Informatica perspective is to say, do we have robust data? Have we looked at everything we need to? Is the data going to be correct? And are we responsible treating that data the way it should be treated to make sure we're building in transparency, accountability, lineage, ethics, et cetera? So we can dig into a little bit of the details here. Not too much, but just relevant data for AI. So for one of the things, I'll just grab the bottom one. Provide self-service access to data products. We're seeing more and more people deploying the data mesh type of architecture where we're decentralizing data and we're letting individual business domains publish their own data that they're closest to. So how do we do that with an eye on AI? Well, they need to publish their consumption mechanisms. They need to publish their usage around the data. So what their accountability behind it, that each business unit needs to go and figure out how they're going to train their data correctly so the model, when it works, against their data, it can say, yes, we can assure that we've put bias or we've tried to reduce bias. Here's how we're doing it. We're taking an eye towards ethics, including collaboration amongst different teams where if I'm publishing one model or my data rather via an API, someone else is publishing it via a SQL view, right? How do we kind of manage all that stuff and for all decentralized? So that's an important one in terms of relevant data, but also just the overall data quality, making sure the data is correct as we can be for fit for use. Robust data, I mentioned this a minute ago, and I think I'll talk a little bit about structured and unstructured data because we data people love structured data, but more and more we're seeing the unstructured data come into these models too, where we need to tie these things together. If I'm we see AI used a lot in healthcare, and so if I've got a customer master and I've got my patient master, and I've got all my patient information, and I want to tie that to a clinical diagnosis from a doctor, which is a PDF document, let's say, or Word document, how do I go and parse all that stuff out and make sure I can connect them? So when I can ask a question about this particular patient and a diagnosis, we can connect the unstructured and structured data together and keep it all in context. Again, keeping ethics and security into account as well. And then responsible data for AI. This is the one that, again, I said, I think this is going to have the biggest impact, we're starting to see, in Europe, they have the EU AI Act, where they're saying, we're going to identify high-risk systems, and we're going to put more scrutiny and more penalties in those systems. Right? If I've got Spotify and it's picking the next song and it goes wrong, who cares if I don't like the song they gave me. But if I have an AI model connected to the German power grid and it decides to turn off power in Germany, right, much bigger deal. So we need to make sure that we're putting extra scrutiny on that model connected to the power grid. Similarly, the US is following along, and other countries too. Brazil and India and Canada and Japan are all looking at these. The US, because we can't really do very much at a federal level, the states are rolling this out individually. Right, Colorado first, California. I think I heard an earlier speaker talking about some of this stuff. So they're all going to be slightly different implementations of AI governance models, but it's all going to be the same kind of idea, and we don't know the impact of everything that's going to happen yet. But what we can say with authority is more lineage, more transparency, more accountability. When we're training our models, more explainability is going to be better than less. So things like including data quality, including data lineage, data cataloging, so we can explain, when the AI goes off the rails, how did that happen? Can we go back and ensure how the system was trained to say we did our best to try and ensure that the AI was as responsible as possible with its output. So with that is essentially getting close to the end of my presentation, but just in terms of next steps, where do we go from here? Well, what we like to recommend is from an AI maturity model, right? The first thing to do when we say, I want to go and deploy some sort of AI initiative, what should I do? First is kind of do a maturity assessment. Where are we? But from the data perspective, what do our data management practices look like? Do we have a governance platform put in place? Are we cataloging data? Do we have data quality set up? Is that data quality standardized? So we're standardizing gender and phone number standardization and country formats across the enterprise all the same way? Are we making sure we're taking care of that from a data perspective? Again, not just an AI readiness perspective, but from a data perspective. And then engage the data office. Right? Make sure we're talking to the CDO and the people in that data office to say, here's the types of things that we need to consider when we're building out these AI models and taking these initiatives. We need robust data, we need relevant data, we need responsible data. How do we do that? So we engage the data office to go and bring them into the loop when we come to these projects to ensure that these outcomes are going to be as positive as we can. And then we pilot to scale. Right? So this is not the boil the ocean approach. Start small. Pick a project that have high impact outputs with good use cases, and then say, how can we go and make sure the data is fit for purpose for those projects? Gather feedback and kind of do this iteration loop in the cycle to say, did this work, did it not work from a data perspective, and what can we improve upon? Then start rolling it out on a larger scale, of course. So once we start getting these results coming in from smaller but high impact use cases, and we're doing a good job with AI, we can say, now let's roll it out to broader perspectives. And a lot of times I'm seeing people start internally and then broaden and go externally as well. So that by externally, I mean letting external customers go and deploy chatbots so external customers can ask questions of our internal data. So with that, that's all I really had to say. I'm not sure how we are doing for time, but I appreciate everybody showing up. And if there's any questions, you can find us at the booth later or take them now or whatever you'd like. But thank you again for coming in.